Alright guys, welcome back to my channel. I'm here today with Mr. Brian Smith with the Alabama Forestry Commission. Today we are putting in some fire breaks because we're going to do some prescribed burn on this property, see if we can get some food in here for the wildlife. So one of the things that I want to do is, I guess my first goal would be habitat for the deer, and I guess the second would be to manage the timber. So, Brian, can you tell me a little bit about the advantages?
Actually, you just hit on a very important thing right there, is not having or not owning property and just having one goal in mind, but having multiple goals in mind. And that's what we like to see, is, management, professionals see landowners do. You can come out here and buy property and with the single goal of hunting deer or just hunting in general and not doing anything else. But the multi-purpose, multiple goals is what we really like to see. So you're not only managing for deer or hunting deer, you're also managing for deer. So in that managing for deer, you're doing things that are going to benefit your timber too. The production of your timber. So when you come in here and prescribe burn, it gets rid of a lot of stuff on the forest floor, and it allows a lot of new growth to come up through. That's great for the wildlife. In turn, when you burn, it adds a lot of nutrients to the soil. A lot of stuff that we burn up leaches back to the soil, and it adds minerals and nutrients to the soil, which also helps those things grow. It helps your timber grow and stuff like that. Now, you said your goals were deer management and timber management. So in order for you to manage your timber, you want to do things to help it grow, right? Mm-hmm. You would say that your pine trees out here would be your crop tree. That's what you're focusing on, right? So anytime you burn, it kills the hardwood, it kills the understory that would be competing for those nutrients and those minerals with the pine trees, which is your crop tree. So anytime you take food or take people that eat food off the table and allow your other things to grow is a good thing. Let me reword that. Anytime you eliminate competition out there, right? Anytime you eliminate things that are not your pine trees, it will allow your pine trees to grow better. It allows them more room to grow, and it allows more nutrients and minerals to be available for them to use to grow. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely.
All right. So
what about the older hardwoods? How would they be affected?
The older hardwoods aren't going to be affected that much because they're all kind of down in the hardwood bottoms, right? Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of change that goes down from the ridge tops to the bottoms, right? Mm-hmm. It's really wet right now, so down in the bottoms, fire isn't going to burn that hot. The way fire actually kills trees is it cooks the cambium layer of cells, which is right up underneath the bark. That cambium layer of cells produces what we call lumber, what we use for lumber, mm-hmm. to the inside, and bark to the outside. So that's the only living part of the tree. So when you burn and it cooks those cells down at the ground level, you in essence girdle the tree. It's no different than taking a chainsaw and running around the bottom of the tree. It kills those cells. Those cells start to burst about 130 degrees. So that's why we burn in the wintertime versus in the summertime. Pine tree bark is a lot more, provides a lot more insulation because it's thicker. Mm-hmm. So if you burn in the wintertime, say 40 to 60 degrees, somewhere in there, you've got a 60 to 90 degree window before those cells start to burst.
Gotcha.
If you burn in the summertime when it's 80 or 90 degrees, you just have a much smaller window, right?
Yeah.
So burning on the ridge tops, it burns a lot hotter because there's pine straw and grasses and other things that burn that are dry, right? So there's a lot more fuel available to burn on the ridge tops versus in the bottoms, where the fuel is still wet. When fuel is wet, it's not available to burn. So there's a lot more fuel up on the ridge tops and pine plantations that's available to burn versus in the hardwood bottoms where the fuel is still wet. So if fire does burn through there, it's not going to be near as hot as it is up on the ridge tops. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, good information.
Okay, good deal.
So with this being the first time that this track is being burned, what do you expect from a first burn versus a second or a third?
That's a good question. We don't want it to burn too hot. So one thing that I have noticed out there is a very thick layer of, we call it duck. And if you burn when that whole layer is available to burn, like when all of that is dried out, you can do a lot of damage. So we like to burn those off in layers. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So, you know, you'll go 2-3 days after a rain and you'll burn that top layer off. You know, you might go the next year or 2 years later and burn some more of it off. And over time, you'll just whittle it down. Well, another reason you don't want to burn it when it's all dry is there are fine feeder roots that come up into that from the trees. And if you burn it all off, it'll burn those, it'll kill those feeder roots, which will in turn damage, you know, the trees. So that's, you know, first burn, second burn, third burn. We just kind of get it down, you know, over time. So, you know, forestry, I think me and I talked about this before. You know, forestry is not a 1 year thing. You know, you can do different projects each year, but it's not a, you know, one and done. You know, to get to, you know, a well-managed forest, it takes time. Sometimes it takes multiple generations. You know.
Yeah, and you put together a 10-year management plan for us.
We did. Yeah. We wrote out a management plan. It is 10 years. In 10 years, we'll reevaluate it and shoot for another 10 years. Which is another good point. You have to have that management plan to be a certified treasured forest landowner, or any of the other certifications that we do, like stewardship, which is a national recognition, and a tree farm, which is kind of like a third party audit of the property. You get those certifications, you're doing well as a landowner, and it's just kind of like a reward for you getting the certifications and the signs to post. You know, just letting everybody know that, you know, you are being a good steward of your property.
Oh yeah, I definitely look forward to trying to get some of those certifications.
Well, we're working towards it, doing the burns and the breaks and stuff like that. So any other thing you do, any chemical applications, any road maintenance, these fire breaks that we're putting in today, all of those are accomplishments, right? So they need to be, you know, recorded. And when we go apply for those certifications, you know, they'll be there for us just to put on the application, because, you know, on those certifications, you know, a lot of times those people don't come out here and see firsthand what you're doing. So we have to kind of paint them a picture, you know, on paper, what you're doing out here, because they're a committee sitting in a room evaluating your property by what we put on that application.
Gotcha.
So, you know, we have to be pretty specific, you know, with times and years and not necessarily a day. You know, we don't have to put like February 22nd, 2023, we came out here and did fire breaks. We can just do winter of 2023, we installed fire breaks and did a prescribed burn, you know. And that'll suffice. That'll let them know that, hey, you know, this year, this winter, you know, is when you did those things. Now the fire breaks, that's another thing. Anytime you know, hunting being one of your primary objectives, anytime you disturb the soil out here, it's a calling card. You know, we have put fire breaks in, left the dozer on site because we were going to come right back the next morning, and there would be deer tracks, you know, walking around the dozer. So deer while it's running and while we're here, yeah, they're afraid of it. But if it's just sitting there, they're very curious animals. They're going to walk up, sniff it, you know, walk around it, see if it's, you know, dangerous or whatever.
Yeah, I've noticed that too. Anytime you get fresh dirt or disturbed soil, it always attracts deer. So I always wondered if it was just like minerals in the soil or what was it?
I think it's the smell, you know. So one thing that we're going to do, you and I talked about it last time, but I didn't put it together until we were walking down there, you know, a while ago. The fire break that we put going down, tying into the creek down there, goes right in front of your hunting stand, your tree stand down there. So you'll have a fire break of fresh stuff. I mean, I know deer season's out now, but you might be able to climb up and video, you know, some deer, just see what's using your property.
Yeah.
Because, you know, a fire break is kind of the path of least resistance, you know, and they're going to use it. So you can't shoot anything, but you can video, right?
So my last question is invasives. So when you're dealing with, say, milkweed or kudzu or things like that, how does a fire, does it eliminate it? You know, what happens?
Well, top kill. You know, most of the invasives are invasives for a reason, meaning that they have a root stock that will support a top kill, and that's why it's so important to be vigilant against those things, you know, especially kudzu, and one of the newest ones is Kogan grass. And just being vigilant about, you know, anytime you see green, and you know, I say this jokingly, but if there is any way that you could gate it off or fence it off and put goats in there, that's the best way to eliminate kudzu, because they're gonna eat green as soon as it, you know, pops out. And over time it will use that root stock. Now that may be the cheapest way, you know, per acre. The other way is of course chemical applications, you know, that the invasive species will take it down to their roots and kill the roots. So killing the roots is a lot more important than killing what we see, right? So that's important. And if you can time it just right, you can spray kudzu toward the end of the summer, fall, right before it freezes, and let that kudzu take that chemical down and keep it down, you know, over winter. That's when it's going to do the most damage. But you know, that's getting lucky sometimes, because you don't ever know when that first freeze is going to happen. It could pop up on you anytime. I say this jokingly too. Meteorologists, you know, weather is a very important thing in our line of work. Whether we're burning, fighting wildfires, or you know, doing management stuff, making recommendations. Weather is very important, and it's very important that we know what's going on. And a lot of times we just don't have that information available to us until maybe the day before, you know. Or maybe even as it's happening, you know, tornadoes, you know, catch us by surprise all the time. You know? So that's just something to be mindful of. You know, weather is always changing, and if we're out here doing management work, weather is a key factor, and we just have to pay attention to it.
All right, and I know it's like what, almost 80 degrees today. So
yeah.
Hopefully it'll get back cooler.
Well, it's the end of February, and you know, we're still having cool nights. It's wet. That always helps when you're burning. But being dry and 80 degrees is not a good thing when you're burning. So we'll have some cold snaps. I mean, we're still in February, so. My guy was just asking me that the other day, you know, about the temperature and stuff, if we're going to have another cold snap. And I just said, historically speaking, yeah, we're probably going to have another cold snap. So.
Yeah, because I've seen it snow as late as April before.
Oh yeah. What was that, 1993?
Yeah.
You remember that one? That was a bad one. It's bad we can remember that far back. We're getting old, brother.
Yeah. All right, Brian, I appreciate you. We're gonna get a little footage of the work that's going on. And
okay.
And what kind of bulldozer y'all riding today?
We brought both the ones that we have here in Chilton County. One's a 2000 model 450H, which is the one running right over there. The other one we got starting over on the other Firebreaks. It's a 1985 450E. So it's a lever action versus a hydrostatic. So the hydrostatic's a lot better. Plus, the 450H has the LGP, the low ground pressure tracks, the wide tracks on it, and the E has, I think they're 18-inch tracks. Don't quote me on that, but I think they're 18-inch. So they're not low ground pressure. It'll get stuck in a heartbeat. So you've really got to be careful with that one.
Yeah. I'm just curious. How do y'all get across creeks? Or are y'all gonna go around?
Well, wet areas and creeks are different. Wet areas, the 450H with the wide tracks can kind of ease through it, you know. Whereas the 450E, you can't take it on wet dirt. I mean, it'll, you know, it just can't do it, you know.
Yeah.
So the 450E, we're going to keep on the Firebreaks that are already established. Oh, which is another point. You know, sometimes you being right next to Resource Management Service property, they already have Firebreaks established. So I reached out to them, and we came up with an agreement where we could use, you know, their Firebreaks. So that really saves on time, you know, and you know, safety is just an aspect of safety for us, because anytime we can use another, you know, another landowner's Firebreaks, or use your Firebreaks for the adjacent landowner, that saves on time, and it, you know, it helps out a lot. It's just the difference in us being here, you know, maybe 3 or 4 hours versus us being here for maybe 3 or 4 days. You know, getting Firebreaks installed 10 foot from another Firebrake. So
I understand that. All right, Mr. Smith, I appreciate your time.
Good deal.
All right.
Looking to get it done.
Yes, sir. I look forward to it.
I'm Brett Boyd, and we're with the Alabama Forestry Commission, and we're putting in Firebreaks to do a prescribed burn.
All right, thank you. Well, hopefully you get the word out there, more people utilize you guys.
Yes, sir. Hope so. We love doing it.